are now listening to United 96 Podcast on the RFK Refugees Podcast Network.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to United 96 here on the RFK Refugees Podcast Network. Special late edition of the RFK Refugees.
Literally.
Ted and John here talking DC United, a wild and slightly eventful week, I guess, for DC United. We'll maybe get into it. There's maybe some missed opportunities, but some positive things to look forward to as we head down the stretch of the final season. I just had a chance to look at the schedule. The season's almost over. We got 4 games left. 4 games left. So coming up right to the end. John, how you doing, my friend? How has been your last weekend and your week?
It's been a whirlwind, man. I've been traveling. I've been all over the place. I'm about to go on vacation, though, starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I don't remember the last time I've had a real vacation, so I am going to be wilding out. I will be out of pocket. There's a game this weekend, right?
Yes, there is. In months.
I won't watch it. I'll have no idea if it even happens. I won't have watched it. Well, I'm going fully off the grid, but it might not even happen. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, it might not even happen. We'll get into that. We'll get into that action. But it's been it's let's just jump right into it. We got soccer to talk about, and so DC United, we came into this week talking about the importance of this final.
Must win. All these games
must win. Well, apparently, I think there's a big question as to, does anybody in the Eastern Conference want to make the playoffs? Because DC United sit right exactly where they are in the ninth place. Now, they do not control their own destiny. There are teams that could go out and win. But I think if there's been any indication of what we've seen so far from other teams, is that no one apparently appears to be interested in actually grabbing that last playoff spot. I think it's personally, I mean, pretty much it's coming down to 2 slots. 8th and 9th are basically the only ones really in play as far as maybe there's going to be some movement. And I think it's going to come down to whichever team can put together the best results. Now, we'll say, I think past couple games, I think DC United probably one of the better teams to get those results, and we'll get into that a little bit. I think they've been one of the most cohesive teams as far as defensive organization, and also putting together,
definitely on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and definitely, but they've also been putting together some chances as well, and they just have not been able to finish or put games away. But I think it is an indication, I think, based on the other teams, that they've been pretty good. So we won't touch, I guess, too much on the 0-0 draw between DC and Charlotte. There was maybe a couple of events to talk about, a potential penalty call on Donovan Pines, and an even more incredible save from Alex Bono, who has, I think, after this past couple weeks, has basically grabbed a hold of that number 1 spot. I think he's the number 1 heading into next year, ahead of Tyler Miller. He has been excellent to fantastic with some really key saves. Go ahead.
No, Ted's talking on Alex Bono a lot differently now in these days.
He's earned it. I will say it's not fair to him. It's not fair to Tyler Miller, because the team has changed. The way the team is playing, the formation has changed. They are a lot, we talked about in the beginning of the year, why is Tyler Miller playing so far out of his box, or why is he playing so high up? Because the team had no speed. They had basically it was like, we need to make this field as short as possible to give us any chance of generating any type of chances, because we will not beat people in the speed. That's changed significantly. Eric Davis, not the fastest player in the world, but has a little bit of pace on him. Obviously, Ruan has pace for days. You have Gabriel Pirani, who's 22, who's got some quickness and speed. And of course, then you have Teku Pietro up top, either that or Ferrardo, or
but
yeah, we'll get.
Sorry, that was an inadvertent noise. I sorry about that. Fajardo elicits a sound from me.
We'll get into him maybe in a little bit, but yeah, and obviously, some other players that have some general speed out there. So the team as a whole. So I think we did see, we have seen Bono venture from his box a little bit, but it hasn't been in the notion of like it's a design play. It's more to cut off some sort of attack. So. I mean, honestly, I think the takeaway from this game, before the Atlanta goal, he was on 300 some minutes of a shutout. Overall, I think he has been excellent to very good. In my mind, with obviously now Tyler Miller coming off surgery, so he's going to be, shut down for a while. I don't think he'll be back until next season. I think right now you got to look at Bono inheriting that number 1 spot. And maybe the team makes a move for another keeper. We'll see what happens. But I think for right now, you got to look at him as the de facto number one.
I bet coming into 24, if Rooney is still there, they're both in camp and it's an open competition.
Oh, I bet it will be, but I mean,
I think you got a 1A, 1B here, particularly with the changing, like you mentioned, a lot of this has to do with the tactics were a function of the lack of speed. If that is remedied in the offseason, these goalies can both play more conservatively or, less kamikaze like. And I think that you have a 1A, 1B situation in that case. Tyler Miller, obviously, I think post All-Star break, injuries and form and confidence all sort of took a big nosedive. So that happens.
Well, the one thing I have to say is that here's the little nugget from Golf's thing. It says the timetable for a full recovery stretches 6 months. So he is
for his surgery.
Yeah. So that stretches into.
Oh, you got a rotate. It sounds like you got a rotator cuff surgery.
Yeah, rotator cuff surgery. So
I know about that. Tyler Miller, we do some band work. Me and doing the wall crawls. We could talk about this. We need to have him on the show. Now I'm interested in having an interview.
There you go. You can give him some of your advice.
That's right, pointers. As an athlete myself, we can talk about how this recovery process goes.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically he is out, which will stretch into next year. So I think coming into camp, coming into next year, Alex Bono's number one. They talk about you don't lose a place to injury. That's an absolute lie. You do lose a place.
Happens all the time.
You do lose a place because of injury. If another player comes in and performs, then that's what you get. So I'm not sure there's much else to really break down. I think Alex Bono was maybe the big story with the big save. DC generated a few chances. I guess you could probably you can call it. Benteke's hit a little bit of a cold streak again after breaking out. It's back to kind of not really being able to get chances. But I will say the team as a whole is generating better chances. So it's a little bit different of a situation, in my opinion.
It was the return of Donovan Pines back out from the cold. Now, I will say, so I listened to, I'm trying to think if it was pregame for this weekend or postgame for the last game. I'm not sure. A Wayne Rooney interview about Donovan Pines. He was being asked multiple questions by, I think it was Dave Johnson about Donovan Pines. And Dave was trying to get Wayne to compliment Donovan, like really, really hard. And Wayne just wouldn't do it. Wayne was like, yeah, physically he's very good. It's like it's the third coach to say this now. Physically he's fantastic, but he has many struggles with the tactical elements of the game and finer skills. And he kept saying he has lots of room to improve. And if he does that, he'll be a good player. Not he'll be a great player, he'll just be a good player if he learns how to do these things. So that is the third coach now to look at Donovan Pines and say, in a certain circumstance, in a 3-back system with other players around him that complement his skill sets, he is a very good player. In anything else, it does not work. It just does not. He is not the same player. So that is just something to look out for. If Wayne returns, he is and a 4-back system is in play. Donovan Pines is not your first choice center back unless things drastically improve at a middle age for a defender.
Yeah, I mean, and there's talks about contract talks involving him. Apparently, he is engaging to a new contract. He's in the 5th of his final deal, worth about $200,000, according to Stephen Golf. So it's interesting to see. I think I've seen tremendous improvement from him on the technical side. The physical side as well. I don't like people talk about, he has great physical gifts. I mean, that was, I'd say, the biggest problem with him. I don't want to say, second, like he would have moments he would be physically imposing, but he had a lot of moments where he looked like he wasn't, and he would get bodied off the ball easily. And I think what's been part of his growth this year is that he's starting to throw his body around. Like, maybe it's been Wayne Rooney saying, look, you're a big guy. You're going to get some benefit of the doubt from referees. Throw your body around a little bit. You might pick up a foul, you might lose a penalty, but you're going to win a lot more battles. And I think I saw that in a moment. I can't remember when it was. I think it was in the Atlanta game, where I think it may have been the Charlotte game. I honestly can't remember it was one of the two games where, I mean, he got his arm up, he pulled a player back, he kind of, he played physical, but also that player was also grabbing onto him or trying to do stuff. And a referee's never going to give you, if both players are grabbing, they're not going to give you that call. They'll call that, maybe that initial shove, but he managed to pull himself in, get himself in front of the play, and stop the ball and made a defensive play. And that's just something we would not have seen last year, I feel like, from him. So
we have both talked about his strengths and his improving, but I think we also were seeing that in the 3-back system. We've not seen that in the 4-back.
Well,
really, I mean, he has in the last two games.
He's had 2-backs, and we haven't seen any major issues. I haven't noticed any major complaints, but the team, of course, has played well. Like, maybe once they're under fire, let's see how that goes. And we got a road stretch coming up.
We've had an opportunity. There are injuries. Birnbaum has a, again, also from the press conference, has a hip problem, but he also said it was a nerve problem. And it has been an issue all year, but he should be good to go on. So that sounds like a chronic condition. But I think that if he is fit, I think they'll put him back in.
Yeah,
and Pines will go back.
Derek Williams as well. Similar calf situation. Looks like he might be raring and ready to go for next week. That's a good sign because I've liked Derek this year.
This is now a little bit of old news, I think, but I really recommend you go listen to Pitch Pass with Brendan Hines-Ike, interviewed. I think that was 2 weeks ago, before his return to Charlotte, talking about his Lisfranc injury. I didn't know it was a Lisfranc injury before listening to this podcast, and that he basically just came down full weight on his foot, and the Lisfranc snapped on his foot. And he was talking about returning back to Charlotte. But the reason you should listen to that show is because I have not heard a DC United player. So, to his credit, Roach asked him about the booing at the end of games and the F-bombs and all that stuff. And he did, and to his credit, he just basically said it hasn't been good enough. It hasn't been good enough ever since I've been here. And he understand. And now he did the classic European perspective, playing about like, we need relegation because these players don't understand pressure, and they can be complacent with a win, a loss, or a draw because the season's so long and there's no consequence. And he was talking about how bad that was overall. But he was a guy who took accountability for this team's performance, and he took accountability for how expectations of excellence have slid so far from when this team was winning. And it was refreshing to hear a DC United player engage with that fact and sort of speak to the fans' idea of what this team used to be and should be, and what he thinks it, and what he thinks it could be and should be. And Steve, that's not Steve's. Steve doesn't do that. Steve talks about what he talks about, and it's not usually about taking accountability in that way to the fans. So it was refreshing to me. So I check that out. It's always, Pitch Pass is always good, but really, really check that out. And it was also interesting hearing his mindset heading back to play in Charlotte where the injury happened. And I'm glad that he made it through. Although in the next game, he had what looked like a similar injury. He shook it off, but like he jumped up for a ball and landed flat foot on the same foot that he had. I was like, oh my God, no, please.
Yeah. Got jumped on too and showed a bloody sock. So
yeah, it's not a good day for him.
As far as we know, he's okay. I know he's been put through a lot. I think we'll see him possibly to get the rest tomorrow. But he's been good since coming back. I think he's another guy that I think maybe we were ready to write off, and he's played well enough. I think that I want to see him back next year. I don't think his contract is too bad. So another player we definitely want to have back. He also has probably, I think, the most hilarious story of the whole night was apparently he had, I guess, in his pre-college or his college days, he had played at Ocean City Nor'easters.
Yes.
And had gotten sent off in an Open Cup game. That was probably back in, 2010. It was 20. I think I looked it up because I wanted to see this. And then apparently when DC was preparing for the next Open Cup game, they found out through U.S. Soccer that he couldn't play because of that red card he had sustained like 10 years.
Was it Rory? Did they say who found it out? It's probably Rory.
It was probably Rory. I don't know. Something with U.S. Soccer. Maybe they went to submit the roster and like, no, he can't play, by the way. So, I mean, that's just the type of wild stuff you see in
from the Obama era. you have a suspension.
Yep.
Closing down on Charlotte, I think the possession story tells a lot. It was 60 again, road game. 61% for Charlotte. They were even on shots. DC United had a lot more shots on goal. I think Benteke was a bit wasteful, and that'll continue here into this next game. But Hines-Ike said basically beforehand, the game against San Jose was points lost, and they expected to get 3, and they didn't. They were basically the way that they look at this is they look at the schedule at the beginning of the season and plot out how many points they should get from each match based on their roster and the roster they're playing against. And Charlotte away, they had penciled for no points. So he basically said a point on the road there, it gets us back for what we lost in San Jose. So they got that. It was what it was. But I think it made the next game all the more important to get 3 points from.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that now.
And they didn't, but I mean, again, they're kind of just sitting right there. No one else seems to be making any moves. They, teams fell apart. We've seen, Chicago fall off a cliff. Charlotte was up 2-0 and looked like maybe that's the team that puts on a run and sinks, and they basically fell apart against Philly. So, I mean, it's weird. This is a weird situation we're seeing with this team right now, where they are still kind of in this hunt. Yes, Miami's chasing them, but Miami is now losing apparently Alba and Messi, and they're going up. Yes, they beat Toronto 4-0, but Toronto is a sunken ship they're just trying to get to the end of the year, and they are going to do a very hard reset. There's going to be players that are going to get dumped all over that roster, and no one really cares anymore at that team. So no motivation in that team. I wish we could play them right now, because I guarantee you we would probably beat them pretty badly. But
someone said on Twitter, and I agree with this, basically like looking at all of these teams that are sort of circling around the last playoff spot and seeing how like just ineffective they are, and how like it's like we have too many playoff spots. Like it has become clear from a like quality depth perspective, when you have 5 teams like blindly slapping each other for the 9th spot and no one can score a goal, you should reduce the number of spots. None of these teams should be in the playoff. So one of them will, but none of them should be.
Yeah.
Hope it's us.
Yeah, I do hope it's us. And so let's get into the game. DC United, Atlanta. That's probably the main game we want to talk about in this effort. But it starts out rough. I feel really bad. I think I was about ready to credit Chris Durkin, because I do feel he has played exceptionally well. I think in that spot, kind of making up and providing a more of a defensive shell for the team. I think he's playing more close to his natural position. Yes, he's playing out in the right and left. I feel like that was a tactical shift by Rooney to just kind of mitigate any sort of wing play that Atlanta was willing to provide. So you had both Matthias Klick and Chris Durkin kind of shuttling out to the right and left side, or kind of moving center to try to keep the numbers in the midfield, at least to overload the numbers in the midfield and keep Atlanta. And it worked mostly. It didn't work in a moment where Chris Durkin kind of goes back, and I think he's looking maybe to try to take the foul. And Owen Wolf swings in. It's a debatable call, but it's certainly not one that's going to be overturned over VAR. He sort of gets the ball first, goes into his leg, takes him out, but it's a physical play, but for the most part, it's a pretty clean win. And right off the bat, we're thinking disaster as Atlanta scores. Was not a good, and I guess I had shades of Philly. I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be like Philly, where the team completely falls apart? And you mentioned the Brendan Hikes interview, and I said, and to their credit, they did not fall apart. They kept pressing. They got control of the game. And I mean, other than, I think there was one moment where the Greek forward, whose name escapes me, for
not Papadopoulos.
Yeah,
his name is Giacomakis.
I don't know.
Giacomakis.
I'm too tired. It's too late. We're recording this.
Georgios.
George. We're recording this at 10 p.m. And I normally I can pronounce it. I just can't pronounce it right now. But a good opportunity, for him. I think like second minute or so, and then that opportunity, and then for really the rest of the game, I mean, it was Atlanta kind of on the back foot and DC pressing, and this was a game where just DC could not effectively, close the game out or to get a goal to try to pull themselves back. We'll talk a little bit about the offside, but I mean, give me some of your impressions, any sort of impressions you saw in this game,
Yeah. I mean, I think it was always going to be a bit of a tough task. I thought the team showed some elements. Again, the defensive performance was fantastic. Held Atlanta to 6 shots all game, 4 of them on goal, but held to 6 shots. The goal came as a result of an error. They were disciplined, and they held a pretty dangerous team to 1 goal. There were issues individually, but there were also really strong performances. I want to talk about this is a quiz. This is a blind quiz. How many assists do you think Matthias Klick has? If you don't know already,
6 or
get a
7.
guess. He has 9. He almost has 10 assists. This is a player. He the stats are not going to meet the eye test for a lot of fans.
Mm-hmm.
For some fans, it will. In this particular game, his assist to Pirani, and we'll talk about the goal, was very, very nice and very visible and very like a nice play in. It took patience. He could have done a lot of other things. He did the right thing. He created 4 chances. He had 5 crosses, which is the most in the team. When you watch him though, what you will remember is him giving the ball away on his own end of the field, or like he'll do 1 or 2 things. He's got like the Donovan Pines like laziness thing, or like a mental laziness that results, but he's not doing it in front of the goal. So like it's not, the consequences are not as severe. But then he'll also do that. Like he's going to have the most assists on this team as playing his position, which is not really. I mean, he's moved around a lot. Now he's in more of an orchestrating role, but like it's an impressive stat accumulation, if nothing else.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, I think there'll be a big question is, do we want him back next year? I still say yes. I think you have him back. I think if you give him a year in a role and you get a team that's settled, I think he'll perform better. And I think also, I think you're having a lot of adjustment with, between Knaus and Durkin as to who's, defensive cover. So it's been adjusting to this lineup. I think it's produced a more solid team defensively. And I think it's also produced a more cohesive attack. You're seeing a team that looks dangerous going forward. Before it was just, I don't know how many times like early middle part of this year, it was just like watching, wing players get forward and loft crosses into Benteke and trying to score goals. You're not seeing that this time. You're seeing cohesive attack that is developing. And a lot of that I think is, Click moving back, and he can be more of a facilitator in that role, and he can dish it to players like Pirani, like in good senses Ted Pietro when he's out there, and also get the ball forward and score goals. So
the other stat, I'm trying to find it here and seeing if they keep it here. It doesn't look like they do. The MLS broadcast, the non-Dave Johnson broadcast, was talking about the number of aerial duels won by Christian Benteke, and I think they said he has won more aerial duels than the rest of MLS, like the teams, like many of the teams in him. I guess maybe like net, like maybe I wonder if they do aerial duels like it's like a plus minus situation, like if you've won 15 and lost 2, you get a plus 3. I don't know how they calculate it, but the stat was basically like he breaks the stat for MLS. Like he destroys the concept of that statistic. He continues to do that. I mean, it is impressive to watch. It is an appealing. I think it's like a trap. I think it's a tactical trap for DC United because they know that will result in the ball being kept. Like it's so appealing. It's like the big shiny apple, and they cannot help but grab it, and they're going to grab it over and over again. But the problem is when you have players like Fajardo as an additional target man, or you have players that are just incapable of finishing chances, it's a struggle, right? Like it goes nowhere. You do that, but then what? And that is what they need to figure out tactically. They had hoped originally at the beginning of this year, great. All right, Benteke's going to score his goals. He's going to get his double-digit goals, but there's going to be Taxi who's going to play off of him. He's going to trap the ball. He's going to play it in Taxi. Taxi's going to shoot and score. Didn't happen. That he could not get comfortable with that style of play, and they don't. There's not. Ted is something else. Mm-hmm. Ted is like a more of a facilitator and a creative player on the box, but he's not. He's not that second. He's a finisher. He's a finisher, but he's not a second forward. I don't think that's not really where he's comfortable. He's more comfortable with the ball. Yeah, in around the box,
ball at his feet. But I think he's showing some of the line passing. I think we saw that against in San Jose, and I think he's also what I think Ted brings is an ability, and what you see missing is his soccer IQ. I think is higher than a lot of people give him credit for, and his ability to sort of be in the right spot and to know what spot to attack, and if the ball gets in that position, and he's in front of goal, he's going to score a goal. I don't know what your face you just made right there.
I was looking for the stat on duels winning. I was looking for the league leader stats. Who do you think has the most offsides called against them in MLS?
Benteke, I'm going to guess.
He does, and it's by 10. He's got a 10. He is Leonard Pahoy levels of I don't know what offside is. It's not great.
I mean, I feel
not
like
great.
I feel like that's I just feel like that's
It's a function of the style, but it's still funny.
It's a function of his style and his big frame. It's just and I think we're existing in a VAR world where, as we'll talk about earlier, where stuff is just like it's getting to the point of so close and ridiculous. And I was it Dave Johnson harping on the radio about the rule change that's coming with offside. I feel like I'm starting to see it with some of these calls and everything like that. Like, I think there needs to be some sort of loosening of the rules. I have some better ideas than, I guess, the daylight rule. I don't like that, mostly because I have to go call that rule on a field with parents who have a cursory understanding. And they changed the rule about what happens when the referee gets hit, and it took about 2 to 3 years before parents caught up to that rule, and they're still yelling at me and saying I'm still a part of the field and I should not blow the whistle. But so I get nervous about rule changes like that. But from a professional perspective, I'm maybe a little bit more for it.
The only other DC United player on any of the leaderboards in MLS is Tyler Miller is leading the league in long passes with 280. The next closest is Roman Berkey with 199. So once again, a stat that tells you exactly what this team is doing. And this team is saying the goalkeeper is going to kick the ball long to Christian Benteke, who will probably be offsides.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, back to the game. I just thought those were two funny stats.
Back to the game, and I guess any other things like I want to call out. We talk about Ferrardo. He blew so many chances in this game. I mean, he's not the answer. I think you're looking at Rooney just trying to shuffle some guys in. He's got.
He knows Nigel's not the answer either, so he's trying to. He's just flipping. He's flipping pins out and saying, "All right, Fajardo, you give it a try. All right, Nigel, you give it a try."
I think Ferrardo's still going to get maybe a little bit of a look. I think we're going to see Ted. I hope we see Ted. I'm a little nervous if Ted does not start. Against the Red Bulls on Saturday, if the game even happens on Saturday, I will start to get worried that there is some niggling injury that redeveloped. They said, well, we're going to lock you down. It's redeveloping, and they might be looking at, if this team ever gets eliminated from the playoffs before the year, I could see a shutdown and possibly surgery potentially coming up on whatever he's dealing with, because
ankle, I think, is the latest. They were trying to get Steve was trying to get Wayne pinned down about if he's able to start if Ted is, and you could tell that he did not want to say that because he probably can't be. He probably can't start, but they also would like to, have that threat out there for other teams like it. But the way he answered definitely to me sounded like, no, he is gutting it out to be 30 minutes available for these games.
That's really sad. I don't know what to make of that, because he had a couple starts. He got shut down for a month. I have to wonder if there's some niggling injury that they're looking at. I think so. They're looking at a specialist, and I will not be surprised. Let's just say I don't know. Again, no, I would not be surprised if eventually they're just like, all right, we're going to go have surgery to try to correct this issue permanently. And you're going to miss a couple months, but you're hopefully going to come back and be good. Another player I think deserves a call out is Eric Davis, who I thought again was excellent. He's the one player we didn't expect much, and we're getting more out of him. I am fully confident to have him back. I think we've got Mohamed Jazz next year. I think it's going to be a battle between him and Davis as to who can be the starter. And if whoever wins that job will probably, then the person who doesn't win the job will probably be gone by the next summer.
I think Eric Davis is not having a number of suitors beating his door down, whereas Jazzy does. I think that I think that's a great 1-2 in whatever combination we get, and I think they both stay. I think it's lucky. We threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall in this transfer window, and this is the only piece that's sticking.
No.
Pirani is another player that we'll talk about. But.
And Pirani's a different category of player, certainly.
Correct. But, he is staying. He is a loan that they better convert.
Oh yeah,
I like what I see a lot,
and I think they will, and I'll get into that a little bit about. I think there's a lot of skepticism about, and you've had it too, on DC converting on loans. I will provide maybe a little bit of background once we talk about him. Another player I do want to mention, because it was brought up, I believe, MLS Gone Wild on the Twitter account said, "Who's your most unsung player?" Most unsung player is Russell Canals, and he is. I feel like we don't talk about him enough. We maybe talk about him in certain stretches. just want to call out like his consistency this year. Has he played every single? I know he hasn't played every single game. I'm sure he's missed a couple, but
he's not.
But
it will be at the end of the year his most prolific season with these.
Yeah, it's 24 games, so 24 games played. So he's missed some moments, but just feel like he's always out there, and I think he's a player. I am hopeful we can still get a couple more good years out of him because I think he's a player who, and in his natural role, I hope we don't get a coach that comes in and says, "Oh, you can be a right back. You've done it before. Go out and do it." So.
Yeah, I think too. He missed some time this year for personal reasons, for personal tragedy, not for injury. So this is like his whatever he did in the offseason to get his body right for this year, he should do again.
Question for you: Who do you want to see start next week? Do you want to see Fajardo or do you want to see Dahomey? Which one?
I don't care. I don't. It does not matter to me. They're both a black hole. So I would say probably Dahomey, because he is less selfish. So there were a number of times where Benteke was aligned for the ball and Fajardo cut in front of him, and that's fine because that's what forwards do. And then he would sky the ball over the crossbar or whatever else, and Dahomey gets out of the way. So I'll do that.
I think it's more of a facilitator, and I think also you're dealing with a lot of players. You're dealing with Fajardo, you're dealing with Dahomey, you're dealing with Assad, and I'm getting into this a little bit. Robertha. Anytime those guys are out there on the field, they know that they are facing, potentially not being on the team next year, and they are desperately trying to force their way into the roster. I'll get into a little bit. Rooney went kitchen sink there towards the end, just throwing like whatever attackers he had out there that he could muster to get the sub, and I think it was to the detriment of a lot of else that was kind of going on there, and I think it pulled away Teku DiPietro a little bit. But let's talk about the goal scorer. Let's talk about Gabriel Pirani. I think a player I was maybe starting to think, I was like, man, he looks good. Didn't do much. I didn't really see much out of him in Charlotte. Again, that game's on turf. We assume maybe he's played some games on turf in his youth days, but that can be a difficult thing to adjust to when you've played professionally for several years and you've never really touched a turf field. It can be a little difficult to then jump right in and try to play on turf. So I wrote him off a little bit. Beginning of the game, I was like, he's really invisible. He's not getting involved. He's not getting much going forward. Second half, that changed very quickly, and he started getting on the ball. He started getting on the dribble. He showed some passing ability, which I think has been maybe the biggest concern or the biggest question mark. But he showed an ability to pass and move the ball to sort of maybe develop that part of his game a little bit. And we've seen him, seeing him develop that, I think, really gave me some hope that he is that he can continue to grow and continue to develop. I think the team, it should be a no-brainer at the end of this year. Sign him on the loan. He takes up, at the very least, he will take up a U22 initiative spot. If his salary is above that, he takes up a young DP, and you still have the U22 initiative spot. People apprehensive about, Yamil Assad. Why can't I think of the Luis Rodriguez? Those were not issues of the team having money. Those were issues in trying to abide by the MLS rules and keep DP slots open, trying not to pay too much to run into the cap situation. It was never an issue, I felt in my mind, that the team didn't have the money. It was that they were trying to navigate their cap situation while still paying what the team wanted, but trying to break it up or navigate a cap situation.
And let's not give them credit, because they have royally hosed their cap situation in a number of other ways. So they may have been trying to do the right thing, and they continually stub their toe on the door of bad decisions. So there's that.
This is a no-brainer. Sign him, pay the fee. The fee doesn't matter as far as the cap situation is if he's a U22, either as a young DP or as a U22 initiative player. I don't think his salary will rise above the, what is it, 650,000, however much it is.
I hope not, from a just a roster construction perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, he doesn't cost much against the salary. But you got to go out and do it, and then now it does lock you in. You've got Durkin now on a young money player. I think he can remain on that for the length of his contract. You have Pirani, so now that does also tend to limit what DP you can sign. You can't go out and sign a designated player that is, I think, like above 25 or something like that. But we could be seeing, some new rules coming this summer. Who knows? Or after the offseason, I should say. Who knows? Who knows coming up? But definitely, I think we're all on team sign Gabriel Prunty. Any sort of analysis or thoughts you want to give on him? Anything you saw?
No, he's great. I like him. I think that he's not, my heart's number 10. My heart's number 10 is in Cincinnati, but he is certainly the best replacement we've gotten since then. So I hope that they can sign him.
A lot of similarities, I think. I don't want to say a lot of similarities, but just
some similarities.
Some similarities between him and Lucho when Lucho first arrived, which was not the complete picture, but you could see it developing, and you could see it. I think he's getting more comfortable. I'm kind of maybe highlighting him this game coming up against New York as a potential breakout game. This is not a good New York team. He's got a goal now. He's got some confidence. If Ted Pietro is out there for a certain point, I think it could be good. Ted did come off the bench. I don't think he had one sort of run. And I think I almost want to be a little critical of Wayne, because Wayne was very much in a kitchen sink mentality. He was throwing on Assad. He was throwing on, I'm trying to remember some of the players. He threw on Dahome. He threw Hurtado. He threw on a bunch of players, was just like, we need a goal. We need to go get a goal. And I think that was almost to the detriment of, right now, in my opinion, one of your best young players, which is Teku Pietro, because I think it forced Ted's going to be maybe a little bit more of a team player than some of these other attackers. These attackers are trying to score goals. They are trying to earn a contract for next year. So they're going to be a little bit more push forward. And I think Ted had kind of sort of had to drop back. So maybe there was some tactical involvement there, but it just felt to me like as soon as all those attacking players came on, Ted's effectiveness really was kind of muted and didn't really develop much. Obviously we have the penalty call, maybe Benteke nails a penalty and Pirani scores and we got a 2-1 victory and we're singing in a completely different tune. The offside call was close. I think there was a lot of confusion in the stands. There was call confirmed that was shown for the handling call, and then they went to the monitor again to look at the offside. Again, it's an incredibly close call. It looks like Heinzike is maybe just a hair offside. I will also say I think the camera angle can do some nutty things. We saw it with the in the week before with Atlanta and Miami, where the ball sort of trickled over the line, and I think there was a Miami broadcaster that was showing a picture from behind the goal and being like, how did they say this crossed the line? And then the soccer photography guy was like, look, it's by my math and looking at my estimation and accounting from where you are and everything else, yeah, it probably just crossed the line. So yeah, visual plays tricks on you. That was a really close call. I can understand the frustration in the stands. For me, it wasn't, I guess, so frustrating. Only thing I was mad about was that the referee called time before 8 minutes. And I don't know, the name was not familiar. I don't know if that was a new referee. I don't know if he was like, look, I got through this game. I didn't make any major mistakes. This game is close. But to me, it stinks of a little lack of in my opinion, lack of recognition of the game. I think there deserved to be at least another additional minute onto that added time. This is a game for the playoffs. You have one team trying to fight, trying to go to get a win. I think recognizing the situation would have been warranted here to give a little bit of an additional time, and to not go out and call the game early. That was my only really gripe with, I think, the officiating. I know that maybe there's some other people that have some more gripes, but yeah. Anything else from this game? Anything else you want to bring up? Or
I don't think so. I think that was a game we would have liked to win. Each game continues to be more and more of a must-win, but like to your point, if no one else wants to win, if everyone wants to just draw and lose the way out, maybe not. Maybe we don't have to win any of these games. I don't know.
This game coming up, I think it's time. You got to put points on the table. I've been happy with the way the team has been playing. I think they finally look like they have something cohesive. If this lineup had been in place beginning of the year, I think we would have sailed in the playoffs, no questions, with how everybody else has been looking. It's not the case. We're playing with very, very fine margins here as we try to move into a playoff spot. But this is a moment I think you have to take. Let me go through some things. So DC plays at home against New York. Funny enough, this is an opportunity. Like if you wanna instill maybe the rivalry a little bit back, we got hurricane force winds that are coming in. Remember the last time that happened to a DC on the eve of a DC New York game. Obviously, hugely tragic situation in New York. Not comparing the two at all. But, we're looking at this game. This is probably the most consequential game between DC and New York. Both these teams are fighting for the playoffs. We haven't had a game like this in a long time between these two clubs. Either these clubs, one club, most of the time DC was really bad, or New York was really bad. It's been kind of one of the two. So I'm looking out for this game as this could be a decider for the playoffs. If DC win this game, they could absolutely bury any chance New York has at making the playoffs right now. The other teams that where some of the other opponents are facing: Atlanta home against Montreal, Cincinnati home against Charlotte, NYCFC of course has Toronto in Red Bull Arena, so they will not be playing at Yankee Stadium, and Chicago at home for New England. But I mean, this is a moment, and then obviously Orlando the next day, Sunday, Orlando versus Miami at Explorer Stadium. So all your teams, all your teams that you're trying to compete with a playoff spot have extremely tough road games coming up, with the exception of New York and Chicago. Chicago, I'm less worried about because Chicago just got absolutely run off the field. NYCFC, we play them. So I'm like, okay, if they win against Toronto, which is expected, and they move ahead of us, we still have an opportunity on the last day to basically catch them. But this is an opportunity, and they're also even with us on games. So less concerned about them, more concerned about the teams that have played fewer games than us. But this is a game that you come out and get 3 points, and if the results go as we would expect, I don't think any of these teams, particularly Montreal or Charlotte, have any hope of winning. They're probably hoping they can at least pull out a point. This is a chance to get some separation, to put the pressure on them for the games in hand where they have to come out and win those. And also maybe pull yourself into the playoff spots. So this game, if DC does not win this game, I think playoffs start to become very much a long shot. And I know we've said that a lot, but I think this is the moment you have to put 3 points on the table. You've got 2 tough road games. Vancouver's tough. Austin has not been that great, but it's still on the road, and it's a road swing that's going to be very difficult. So yeah. Score prediction. What do you got for the game?
I would say 0-0 if this game gets off in the rain. I think offense is going to be very challenging in the soup that will ensue. And also it's either going to be 0-0 or 4-4. That is my prediction.
Do you think they play the game on Saturday?
Yep.
You think they do?
I do. I think they'll do everything in their power to get it off.
We'll see. I think it's going to depend on what the storm's like. If it pushes quickly and it lightens up, I think if you've got 40 mile per hour gale force winds, I don't see how you can play
There's going to be like 7 people at the game either way.
Maybe.
I'm going to. And that's counting families.
I'm going positive. I'm going 2-0 DC. I've got Benteke and Ted Pietro with the goals off the bench. I think DC gets a goal early, and I know they haven't done that much this year, but I think they do it, and then I think they kind of hold on, and then New York pushes, and then Ted comes in for like 30 minutes and then sneaks a goal to kind of bury it. So,
all right.
So yeah, should be fun.
I hope that happens.
If we're going to the game, John will apparently not be watching. I'm sure he will watch the replay when it happens.
Sometime
when it happens. We appreciate y'all's patience. We will be back on Monday for hopefully a live show, and we'll be talking hopefully about a win. Hopefully. Oh, right, John, you're out. You're out, aren't you?
I'll be back late Monday evening, so we'll see. It depends how good the vacation was.
We will do a live show for you guys. I might even be planning something fun. Maybe a watch along. Maybe a watch along for the road game in Vancouver. I think that could be a DCU After Dark. Could be fun.
Oh boy, that sounds fun.
Details coming. Anyway, thanks you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.